After a PED suspension this season, the Phillies still decide to pick up Jose Alvarado's team option. Find out if it was the right decision on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Phillies, your number one place for Monday through Friday, daily Philadelphia Phillies content. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So Jose Alvarado had his team option picked up by the Phillies. $9 million on the books for next year. He's a very talented pitcher, but he got popped for PEDs this year. How do you bring a guy like that back? Is that the right decision? We're going to start by talking about that. Then we're going to get into my free agency wish list. Free agency open today, so the Phillies now can sign players, including their own, that are hitting free agency. Who do I want? How does it work out? I'm going to run you through a couple of names because a lot of people have been asking me for the solution to the guys that I'm looking to move on from. And then we're going to talk about a move the Phillies did make today, a minor league move, but Bryan De La Cruz was signed. He's got some major league experience. He's got some pop. How much should we expect from him at the major league level, if anything? So we will talk about all of that on today's episode. But let's start with the Jose Alvarado conversation because Dave Dombrowski told us already that this was going to happen. In his year-end media availability, when asked about Jose Alvarado, he said, I would be surprised if he wasn't back, basically. And with that being his decision as the president of baseball operations, that's him saying, without saying, we're going to pick up the team option on Jose Alvarado. So I'm not shocked by the news at all. He'd already basically reported it almost a month ago. But is it the right decision? And that's where the question comes in. There is something in my mind where I think of a bridge to Jhoan Duran, much like Ryan Madson was the bridge to Lidge back in that 2008 year. And I think, Jose Alvarado, lefty, throwing 100 into Jhoan Duran, righty, throwing 103. What a combination that would be at the back end of the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen. At the same time, I think about the PED suspension. I think about how Jose Alvarado left without addressing his teammates as soon as the news came down. Now, he talked to them later when he rejoined the team to pitch in the regular season. But if there are hard feelings out there for some folks in the fan base, when you look at a guy who could have been very useful in that series against the Dodgers and could not pitch in that series because of the PED suspension restrictions, can you just say, all good, that was 2025, and now 2026, we're willing to wipe the slate clean on Jose Alvarado and not hold the grudge? I think that's going to be a tough thing to do for some people. For some, it may seem like an emotional response to hold that against him because ultimately he's still going to throw hard and he's still going to be effective and he's still a talented relief pitcher. So the question is, how much does morality and playing within the rules weigh for you compared to this guy can still help us? $9 million is not too expensive of a deal for a guy of his caliber. You're getting a steal at that dollar amount based on what he would have gotten on the open market. How do you weigh those things? My gut feeling, just like my instant reaction, would be I'm really not looking forward to rooting for Jose Alvarado again because that PED suspension it's unacceptable. You either cheated knowingly or you did not do your due diligence to make sure you were keeping everything that you were taking within the lines of what Major League Baseball allows, and you majorly hurt the Philadelphia Phillies in a big-time year in what ended up being a tight series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Like, that's my gut reaction. It's hard not to be mad at him for that. But at the same time, he's a talented player. And it's not like I don't know, it's not like he broke the law. It's not like he killed somebody or like had violence, got arrested, anything like that. And trust me, we've seen guys have bigger issues in this town than Jose Alvarado and be welcomed back, whether that's the Phillies or one of the other sports teams in town. There's a long history of that in just professional sports in general. So in the grand scheme of things, right, I don't think Jose Alvarado's a bad person. I think he made a really bad decision that hurt his team. So logically, by the time we get around to opening day 2026, I think we're going to come to a point where we're over it. It's hard to say even now in the wake of the postseason ending. And I know that feels like forever ago if you've been trying to put the Phillies out of your mind, or at least that Phillies-Dodgers series. But I think where we're going to get to with the Jose Alvarado thing, and I did not want him back. And that was an emotional response, and that's probably short-sighted of me. But that's how I feel right now. Projecting out to how I could feel on opening day, I do think that I'm going to get to a spot where I say, all right, I understand the talent level of the pitcher. I understand that you're going to lose some bullpen arms and you're going to need to fill some of those spots. And you don't have a lot of guys in the organization that could fill those spots. And you certainly don't have a Jose Alvarado sitting around in the minor leagues waiting to come up. You don't. That's reality. You're not finding a lefty throwing one-on-one with his stuff and also with his major league experience. So if you took the name Jose Alvarado off the back of the jersey, I guess it would just be Alvarado off the back of the jersey, and you just looked at the stuff and the dollar amount, and you say for $9 million in the year 2026, you can have a lefty with this ridiculous stuff that has strikeout stuff out the rear and has major league experience, both regular season and postseason, though he has had rough moments in the postseason, but I'll still take him over a lot of guys. That seems to be a no-brainer to have Jose Alvarado back. And I think that's the decision that Dave Dombrowski and his staff made, right? They have to look at the numbers. They don't have the luxury of saying, man, that really ticked me off that he had the PED suspension. He's gone. You have to look at it and say, well, are we cutting off our nose to spite our face by not picking up the option on Jose Alvarado? And ultimately, they came to the determination that they would be if they let him walk. And they need to find bargain deals because there are going to be some big-time contract players, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, that they're going to have to re-sign. They're going to have to keep space open, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, to bring in new players because there will be some changes coming, or at least there better be some changes coming, or we're going to riot. So at the end of the day, from a front office perspective, the Jose Alvarado move makes a lot of sense. But from a fan's perspective, where we have the luxury of making emotional claims and decisions and hypothetical thoughts on what the team should do, it annoys me a little bit that the guy's coming back. And I'm still mad at him for the PED suspension. And the only way that I'm going to forgive him is if he goes out and he helps his team win. That's it. You are now, like, for example, if the baseline for Jose Alvarado was go out there and pitch to a, 2.8 ERA, and we're happy with what you've given us. Now, because of what he did this year and what he was unable to contribute, that baseline level of success, it raises. A 2.8, if that was good before, now I need you to pitch like a 2.5 or 2.4. And that might seem unfair, but he's got to earn stock back with this fan base, with this clubhouse, with this organization. And while he's still good enough to hold a spot on this team, according to Dave Dombrowski, by giving him by picking up the team option, he doesn't really have a lot of great stock with me right now. So you can let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with the move. And if you disagree, is it coming from an emotional space? Because to me, it's really hard to argue against the flat out baseball of it. But sometimes the decision is bigger than who they are on the field. And again, It's not like the guy committed some crime, some heinous act. But if he knowingly cheated or didn't do his due diligence, he deserves to still get ripped by the fan base for that to a certain extent. But Jose Alvarado is back. Jhoan Duran is back. You have your 8th and your 9th inning guys for 2026 at least. And that's a good starting point for rebuilding the bullpen. The bullpen's going to be tricky. So this next exercise we're doing, we're not going to involve the bullpen. But I wrote down the starting lineup, or I guess the defensive positions at least. If there's any platoons, in my mind, I noted them, and also a starting rotation for 2026 for the Phillies. Who would I go get? They're realistic options. There might be some things that when you look at the moves needed to be made, I have to backtrack on based on what I want the Phillies to do in a dream scenario. But this is, if I was Dave Dombrowski, here would be my offseason and how I would put it together. We'll talk about that coming up as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about Prize Picks first, though, because this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, and you and I make decisions every day. But on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. And if you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. That's it, 2. And if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. It's so easy to get in on the action. Now, I've been using it mostly for football because, I don't know, listen, I do Eagles pregame over at 97.5 The Fanatic. I feel like football is my bread and butter. Watch basketball a little bit, but I like taking a look at some of the big-time mobile quarterbacks. We've got one in this city in Jalen Hurts, maybe Josh Allen, maybe Lamar Jackson when he's healthy. And you know what I like to do? They've got a new stacks feature for Prize Picks, which means you can now pick more on Josh Allen's rushing yards, passing yards, touchdowns, and put them all together in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Okay, this is a realistic exercise. So this is not going to be Kyle Tucker's the new right fielder for the Philadelphia Phillies. Oh, and they trade for Byron Buxton, and he's starting in center. And Pete Alonso is playing first base, and Bryce Harper plays left, and Kyle Schwarber DHs. No, we're going to be realistic. I took some time, and I put together what I would try and make the Philadelphia Phillies lineup or defensive alignment, however you want to look at it, and starting rotation for the 2026 season. So let's go around the diamond and talk about who I have where and why. First and foremost, let's start at catcher. And I have JT Realmuto re-signing with the Philadelphia Phillies, bringing him back because, frankly, he is way too important to the leadership of this team, the management of the pitching staff. He is good enough defensively, and he was good enough for a good stretch of this past season offensively for me to give him a 2-year deal. If he wants 3, we reevaluate. But I think you could get him on a 2-year deal, especially considering his age. You bring him back. He's your catcher for the next couple seasons. And then it's all throttle, like full throttle go to try and figure out who the next catcher of the Philadelphia Phillies is, because Marchand hasn't cut it yet. And you don't really have anyone in the farm system since you dealt Eduardo Tait in the Minnesota deal for Jhoan Duran. But because you don't have anyone else, JT Realmuto is your guy. Let's go to DH, because you know where I'm going with this one. If you've seen the podcast, watched the podcast, listened at all, Kyle Schwarber's the DH of this team going forward. You got to pay him. You're not going to get 56 home runs somewhere else. It's not going to be possible to refill those numbers, and he's going to be expensive. But you ask around baseball, and you ask if there's one more well-liked player in locker rooms around baseball than Kyle Schwarber. There's not. Is there a better leader in baseball than Kyle Schwarber? There's not. Is there a better power hitter in baseball than Kyle Schwarber? Probably, but that list is less than a handful of guys. He is the full package. He is integral to how this team operates. That's why he's worth every penny. So Kyle Schwarber will DH. So you might say, Connor, where are the changes coming? If you're re-signing JT and you're re-signing Kyle Schwarber, how is this team ever going to look different? All right, slow down. We'll get there. At first base, no surprise, Bryce Harper. He's not going to change positions. I just don't see it as a realistic possibility. But you could do worse at first base than Bryce Harper. So that situation, it is what it is. He's your guy long term there. I've been bringing up Alec Bohm being a potential trade candidate. And then I looked at the third baseman market. And the one guy that I look at as a potential third base option is Alex Bregman. That would actually put you in a better spot. But Bregman's going to be expensive and he wants like a 6 or 7 year deal. So is that realistic to do in addition to Schwarber and Realmuto, who I already told you I'm re-signing? I don't think it is. I don't think they're going to commit that amount of money to a player that age from outside the organization. And I don't see that happening. And there aren't really any other good options unless you trade for somebody. And I don't know that they have an asset that they could trade to get a third baseman the caliber of Alec Bohm. So Alec Bohm's staying. And that's just reality of the market. I didn't have a better option for Alec Bohm, even though I've brought up the possibility of him being moved. So he's going to be your third baseman, and Trey Turner's going to be your shortstop. But part of the reason that I felt comfortable keeping Alec Bohm at third base is because there are options at second base. So what I would do is I would keep Edmundo Sosa as the utility infielder, a guy that can play for anybody at any time. And then I'm going out and moving Bryson Stott because there's a better option or a better couple of options at second base than what you'd be able to find at third base. Not saying like there's better players, because I think Bregman is the best player in either the second base or third base market. But I look at it and I say, which one's more realistic, Alex Bregman or this guy? Move off Bryson Stott and sign Brendan Rodgers. And there's a couple reasons why I would go out and get Brendan Rodgers to play second base for this team. He's a righty. It balances out the heavy left-handedness of this lineup. He's a Gold Glove winner at second base. But also, he is one of these bargain bin deals that could be buy low and receive high rewards. Not only is he a plus defender at second base, he's a guy that hit 191 this year and has shoulder issues, has had some injuries. So why do I like him? Because he's a career 261 hitter and he's still a good defender. And you know what happens if he ends up stinking? Edmundo Sosa plays second base. So you have a safety net to say, okay, if this completely falls apart, then you go with Edmundo Sosa. But you could probably get Brendan Rodgers for cheap, and you could probably get him in his age 29 season on a 1-year deal. And that gives you a low-risk, potential high-return option. If he hits 260, he's had a couple of seasons where he's hit more than 10 home runs. He's done that 3 times in his year, 13, 13, and 15 in 2024, 2022, and 2021, respectively. Let's say you get 13 home runs, a 260 average, and Gold Glove defense from the right side of the plate from him. Let's rock. That's your guy. That's as good, if not better, than anything Bryson Stott's going to give you. I'd take that. And it switches things up, and maybe he can play every day, rather than being a guy like Bryson Stott who can't face his own handedness on the mound. So I like Brendan Rodgers there. That's what I would do. So that's one change. Now the outfield gets tricky. I've realized something. Harrison Bader in center field, you kind of have to. There's no real other good option. And I think the Phillies are going to end up overpaying, and I hope it works out based on what the production should be. He's going to get paid more than probably what he would be worth over 162 because he because of what he did in the short term with his team. But Harrison Bader's got to be your center fielder because I have Justin Crawford starting in left field, and that seems to be a no-brainer, which means then I'm going to have Brandon Marsh playing right field. But we could have a platoon there. If there was a player who I wanted to add to the outfield this year through free agency, it would be Miguel Andujar, who is a .282 career hitter and also a right-handed bat. There's not a great defender, but you add a righty with a high average out there to the outfield, and you say, okay, now we've got a second baseman who can hit a little bit better than Bryson Stott, a corner outfielder that's a righty that can balance out the left-handedness of Crawford and Marsh. You throw Bader in the mix there, and if you platoon Marsh and Andujar, perfect. If you start Andujar, perfect. And then you throw in, Johan Rojas or Weston Wilson as a defensive replacement, and we roll with that. So that would be my outfield. Crawford, Bader, and then a platoon of Marsh and Andujar in the other corner. Or you can move off Brandon Marsh, bring in a reliever, Andujar starts, and you have a little bit less depth. But those are my solutions in the outfield, in the infield. And then there's one name to look for in the rotation. Sanchez, Luzardo, Nola, and Painter are going to be 4 of the 5. You could do Taijuan Walker, but Taijuan showed he's versatile and can go to the bullpen if needed. There's another guy that showed that this year for the team that won the American League. Chris Bassitt is ancient. He's in his late 30s, which means 1-year deal. He's made 30-plus starts in each of the past 4 seasons. So he's durable, even into his late time. He's a righty to balance everything out. He will not be that expensive. I would like to see them go out and get Chris Bassitt. And guess what? If Wheeler comes back and is fine and takes his spot in the rotation, Bassitt can throw out of the bullpen. He showed that with Toronto this year. So that's what I'm doing. Andujar, Bassitt, and Rodgers would be my 3 main looks at free agency. And then you'd have to pick up some guys to fill out the bullpen. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Are those crazy takes? What are your thoughts on how that team sounds? Let me know in the comments, and we will discuss. But coming up next, the Phillies have already made a move. Bryan De La Cruz, who you might know from in division, played time with the Marlins, was signed to a minor league deal. How much of an impact can we expect him to have at the major league level, if any? And is this a sneaky good move for the Philadelphia Phillies? We'll talk about that as we wrap up today's episode. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So what you do is you head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Bryan De La Cruz signs a minor league deal with the Philadelphia Phillies earlier today. And because it's a minor league deal for a guy who is not on a roster, they're able to go out and do that and get that deal done. So they did that before the true major league free agency period opened. And what a minor league deal means is just you're going to be paid at a lower rate based on playing in the minors as your expectation. And if the guy does make the team, well, then you can figure something out there. But you're getting a deal basically on a guy. And if anybody on a minor league deal contributes to the major league club, that is a major bonus. So Kenny, let's look at his numbers, because this past year, he played for the Atlanta Braves and only had 50 plate appearances. He had 9 hits in those 50 plate appearances and batted .191. His career batting average at the major league level is .251, which is respectable, but he's been on a bit of a slide lately. He batted, in 2024 total, batted .233. The last time he batted over .250 was back in 2023. But his numbers with the Marlins in his full seasons in Miami, was traded in 2024 to the Pittsburgh Pirates, .296 in 2021, .252 in 2022, .257 in 2023. So when he was getting ample playing time, and early on in his career, he was 24, 25, and 26 years of age in those seasons, he showed he could hit at the major league level. The real intriguing thing is that he had 13 home runs in 2022, 19 in 2023, and 21 bombs in 2024. So you have some pop there, and it's pop from the right side. So the Phillies just added an outfielder that did have a 21 homer season from the right side of the plate that plays in the outfield. Could he be an option for the Philadelphia Phillies at the major league level? Absolutely. In fact, he should 100% be on the team. Unless something crazy happens in the outfield and they add a bunch of guys or they make some nuts trade where they add an outfielder that I'm not expecting. Let me ask you, Bryan De La Cruz or Weston Wilson? Bryan De La Cruz or outfield version of Otto Kemp? Bryan De La Cruz or Johan Rojas? Like, which of those players have higher potential at the major league level? Weston Wilson, all due respect, I don't think is ever having a 21 home run season at the major league level. Now, could Cruz do that again? I don't know. And it's more likely than not that he can't. But here's what I'm saying. Like, let's say they listen to Locked On Phillies and yours truly, and they go out and they sign Miguel Andujar. And then Brandon Marsh platoons with him, and Harrison Bader comes back, and Justin Crawford starts in left field as a rookie. Well, you need another outfielder to fill out that depth, and Kyle Schwarber ain't going out there. So you add a righty with some pop, and then let's say you're facing a tough lefty, then your outfield is De La Cruz in left, Bader in center, Andujar in right. It's not a great defensive outfield outside of Bader in center, but it's one that can swing the hell out of the bat against left-handed pitching. I don't hate that. And I don't see a better option in the outfield in the Phillies minor league system or the guys that were up and down this past year, like a Weston Wilson. So, Bryan De La Cruz, major league player for the Phillies next year, I think it should happen, barring anything crazy in free agency where they sign a big-time name to the outfield and then it drops everybody down a peg as far as where they would play depth-wise. It's a gamble, but I don't hate it. And these are the kind of things where you have to do to fill out an outfield, right? You're not just going to go out and get Kyle Tucker. That's not a realistic thing for the Philadelphia Phillies this year. They're going to pay Schwarber. They're going to pay Realmuto. Now, it might drive fans insane that they're trying to find bargain bin deals and not spending money the way, for example, the Dodgers, two-time World Series champions, spend money. But you got to work within the constraints of reality. So you go out and you sign this guy to a minor league deal, and if he works out, great. And if not, you're not risking all that much. Something that I will point out, I will not fall for the same argument that I made for Max Kepler, where I looked at kind of a one-off season where he hit 36 home runs. And I said, hey, could you find that power again? And recent history would tell you he's not that good anymore. That's kind of where Bryan De La Cruz is at. So I'm talking to you about the ceiling of the player, not so much the expectation of the player. My biggest expectation for him would be a depth option in the outfield that can give you some pop and maybe like a righty pinch hitter off the bench if you are in a home run spot. That's the best that I see him being. If he's starting in the outfield for the Philadelphia Phillies, we have a major, major problem. That would be a failure of an offseason. So don't take this Bryan De La Cruz like fun segment about what he could be as a could he start? If he starts, Dave Dombrowski, start up the jet because you're gone. Like he's not an acceptable starting option in the outfield. But you do have to look at the upside of these players. And we've seen it's more so been relievers for the Phillies in the past, guys on minor league deals that will come up and make an impact in the bullpen. And that's something that you'll probably see again this year. Maybe you'll see it with the rotation as well. But when you look at an outfielder on a minor league deal, you could do worse with upside than a guy with the numbers that De La Cruz has. And he's been in the division before, so the evaluation of him is probably from a place of pretty good familiarity. The Phillies faced him all those times when he was in Miami, so they know what he can bring. We'll see if it works out. But I don't hate it. It's a good, just first flyer of free agency to say, at least we're thinking about stuff with retooling what our outfield system is. But God, I hope Justin Crawford's good because these patchwork piecemeal outfields are getting older by the year. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Tomorrow, we are going to get back to our free agency evaluations and guys that are available one by one. We're going to take a look at anything that did happen on the first day of free agency and why, again, a reminder, it's not just this immediate avalanche of moves. And we're going to take a look at some potential bullpen options for the Philadelphia Phillies, since I didn't do that in my breakdown of my wish list for the Phillies offseason today. And while you're waiting for the next episode of Locked On Phillies, we would love if you became part of our Everydayers Club. Our Everydayers Club, they're tuning in every day on YouTube, or they're listening every day wherever you get your podcast. We are available on both. And on YouTube, you could subscribe, which is free and easy, and I'd really appreciate. You'd appreciate too, because you'll get notifications when new episodes are posted, so you never miss any of our great content. Locked On Phillies is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we love you joined us every day, either watching on YouTube or, again, we're available wherever you get your podcasts. And I will talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.